I'm here to talk about innocent. We don't make ice cream, we make fruit smoothies. And I was asked to talk about the sort of the sense of mission that we have, the sense of ethics that we have in the business, and how does that translate into hopefully having some greater consumer engagement and loyalty. And I thought, actually, rather than give you the full story, I've just teased out 5 things that we have found to be true since, as 3 26-year-olds, we'd left our jobs and started selling smoothies from a market stall, and have since that day where we sold 24 bottles, managed it to turn into a business that's selling 3 million bottles a day. What are the things that have helped us, I guess, take on the big guys? We've kind of historically been the David against the Goliath. You know, we went up against the world's biggest food and drinks companies, and we didn't have any experience or any money behind us. So it's just been a case of making some absolutely colossal mistakes that we've learned from, and also listening to some people that are brighter than us and copying them. And I've condensed those lessons down into 5 things that we think have really been behind the success of Innocent. And the first is this, right? If you want to engage consumers, if you want to engage employees, if you want to engage retailers, you want to engage suppliers, I think it all starts with trust. And trust all starts with being consistent and being congruent and having something that you believe in, having a point of view on the world, a mission, a clearly articulated sentence that your granny would understand that explains what it is that your business or your entity is here to do. We learned this from Google, right? This is a business I'm absolutely borderline obsessed with. They started in the same day, in the same month, as the same year as us. And we've grown to be over 200 million in size. They're over 80 billion in exactly the same period of time. So in some ways, you could say that they're winning, but it's not over yet. But and I think people know this, they have one sentence which absolutely encapsulates what their business is and why it exists. They say they exist to organize the world's information and make it universally available to all. And you think, wow, that one sentence absolutely nails exactly what it is that they do. It nails their strategy, it nails their ambition, it nails their sense of why they exist in the first place. And I think it's an underpinning of success, it's an underpinning of loyalty. Know what you're about and make sure every fiber of your organization's being is behind delivering against that ultimate aim and purpose. We talk about Innocent. We're just simply here to help the world become a little bit healthier. Sounds a bit trite, but we mean it. We want to see less people like that and more people living a little bit longer with nicer hair and nicer skin, which eating natural, healthy, ethically sourced food simply does for the body. And so we love the idea of having this sort of simple mission. It means that consumers understand what it is that we're about. So not everyone's into that, but at least it means that we're consistent. We say that this one thing, and I think it begins for loyalty to allow to be formed. It's not going to be enough in itself, but having a simple sense of what it is that a business stands for, I think is a good sort of foundation for people to be loyal to it. And I love businesses that take this idea of having a simple, single-minded sense of what they're here to do, and they keep getting more and more extreme examples of it and getting more and more focus behind it. This is my best example of a business that really does understand what it's here to do. This is a real photograph of the head office of a company in America that makes baskets. And I look at that and think, right, that is definitely a business that knows what it's here to do. And you can imagine, can't you, if you're a hungover employee walking in on a Monday morning thinking, what am I supposed to do today? And you look up at that and you go, oh yeah, make baskets. It's sort of... I put this in, by the way, I think perversely it's a great example of a business that really doesn't keep its main thing, doesn't really sort of live its mission. So you can get it horribly wrong as well as getting it horribly right. But for me, having that sense of mission is a great place to start. Then, yeah, I mean, the main topic we've been asked to talk about is ethics. And so I do think ethics help. I don't think it's enough, but I think it really does help create a sense of loyalty. Consumers, I thought it was really interesting what Jerry said. The same is going to be true with Innocent. Most people Innocent, the mass majority of people that buy Innocent don't know about this ethical stuff. And nor should they. Quite frankly, it's quite boring a lot of the time. But they do have a sense of it. They do have a sense of this is a business that just cares a little bit more than the next guy that's selling fruit juice. And in the world of loyalty, between fruit juice, it's not a big decision. You've just got to choose one or the other. If people instinctively feel that that's just a business that's doing a slightly better job, a slightly more ethical job than the next guy, it might just be enough for them to put you in your shopping basket rather than the competitor. So there's no sort of big silver bullet here, but having a sense of ethics help. And again, it's something that we believe in. We know that we sound like Miss World contestants, but we have this innocent ideal to leave things better than we find them. We want to be net positive in the communities in which we operate. And we mean that in every sense of the word. But rather than just be an empty phrase, we have a very clear strategy about, okay, so how are we actually going to deliver on that promise of leaving things better than we find them? And so we have a five-fold plan, right? We're only ever going to make healthy food and drink. That makes sense. Secondly, we're always going to pay a premium for the ingredients to make that healthy food and drink to come from ethically accredited farms. Thirdly, we're going to invest hard in pioneering new forms of more sustainable packaging, because that's the thing that's actually in the consumer's hand. Fourthly, across the business system, we make sure we reduce the amount of energy, water, and landfill that we use up. And then fifthly, again, like Ben & Jerry's, we give 10% of our profits to charity to fund rural development in countries across the world where the fruit comes from. And each of those things, they have a direct consumer-facing aspect. So the fact that we make healthy food and drink, we just made a simple commitment to our employees, to our suppliers, to our consumers. We're only ever going to make healthy food, and we're only ever going to make from healthy ingredients. And rather than that be a subjective thing, we went to this thing called the Scientific Advisory Committee. It's a panel of doctors and nutritionists that are appointed by the government to every 4 years review the state of the nation's health and the state of the nation's diet, and to make recommendations what we should all eat more of, given the disease that's in society and given the things that we eat. And they identified 5 things that universally the human body does better from having more of: fruit, vegetables, whole grain, dairy, and oily fish. And we took a look at that list and thought, well, we're not going to be the oily fish fruit juice company, but other than that, we're going to be these 4 things. So everything from innocent will only ever be made from 1 or 2 or 3 of these 4 things. And being able to actually articulate that in then products which go directly to solve consumer needs, I think helps build loyalty. If you're making dumb products that people don't need or want, then they're not going to be loyal to them. Whereas our products are smoothies, 2 portions of fruit, a veg box, 3 portions of veg. That's your 5 a day in one little meal. And no other food company is delivering that simple, natural, one-stop shop to being healthy. So again, we think getting the product right, making sure it solves the need, it scratches the itch that the consumer has, it's another underpinning of loyalty. The ethical side, yeah, we have the highest standards in the industry in terms of workers' protection, in terms of biodiversity protection, in terms of pesticide reduction programs for sourcing our fruit. And in addition to that, we fund projects to either bring on smallholder farmers in Africa to protect against water usage growing strawberries in Spain. Different projects all across the world. Again, they always have a consumer-facing angle because it's about the ingredients that go into the products. It reflects on the nature of the way that we make something. And all of it's communicated on the packaging, on the blog, on Facebook, on Twitter. So it just provides us this constant sort of news flow of little, small incremental improvements, never trying to make out we're perfect or anywhere within a county mile of that, but sincere in our efforts to make ourselves just a little bit better today than we were yesterday, and hopefully leaving a slightly better result for the people that are involved in making our products possible in the first place. Again, it's the same lesson with the packaging. Small incremental improvements. Use less material in it. The material that you use, make sure it comes from sustainable sources. And then thirdly, make sure that that product at its end of its life can then be recycled. Again, dead simple things. And we're not trying to claim any sort of great credit here. We're just trying to make things a little bit better. We did it with our plastic bottle. It took us 4 years, but we developed the world's first fully recycled plastic bottle. But it happened in increments. First, we could only get 25% of recycled plastic in there, then 50, then to 100. But what was great, the whole time, we kept the consumer updated. It said on the packaging, this is currently 25% recycled. We're working on the rest. We'll let you know when we get there. And then when it moved to 50%, it was amazing how many emails we got in from people that had just seen this tiny little thing written on the bottom of the label for the last year, celebrating it, congratulating us. And then when 2 years after that, we got to 100%. It was really quite a big thing. The press picked up on it, and it wasn't just the fact that we got there. It was the fact that we kept the dialogue and the communication all the way through. And I think that's another thing that's helped people be loyal to Innocent, is that we've made it a very sort of open-sourced experience. Everyone gets to hear about what's going on, the bad stuff, the good stuff, the incidental stuff. And then, yeah, we give 10% of profits to charity. As I say, that goes into countries essentially across the world where the fruit comes from. At the moment, funding 16 different projects, typically all about helping people that are pretty much at the wrong end of the lollipop stick in life, the people that are scratching around in the dirt just trying to get their families fed for the day. And we just go in there and give them a little bit of that first leg up on the ladder to develop themselves. And again, great source of loyalty and engagement. It's on the packaging. You can go onto the foundation website. You can find out about it. People at Innocent go on foundation scholarships and go and work for 2 weeks at a time in the different projects across the world. So it definitely delivers employee engagement that I can measure. 95% of people say that they're proud to work at Innocent. Does it improve consumer engagement? Again, I think I refer you to Jerry's answer. It's almost a leap of faith. You do it because you want to do it, and you can. I think it helps. I can't prove that it does, but I do also believe in Jerry's point about the spirituality of business. There's a karma in business. You do good things come back in, and I think I can't prove it, but I would, if I was setting up another business tomorrow, I'd do exactly the same thing again. And then we have what we call social marketing, which is much more about direct engagement with the consumer and only made possible because of the consumer. And our biggest and best example is called The Big Knit. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. Has anyone heard of it? Yeah, so we get basically, for people that don't know, it's a slightly bonkers thing, but we get volunteers to knit these tiny little woolen hats that then get put on the smoothie bottles in winter. And for every one that gets sold with a hat on it, 50p goes to charity to keep old people warm during the winter. And it's this slightly mad thing, because the guy that came up with it 7 years ago told me the idea, and I said, mate, that's rubbish. It'll never work. You're going to have to get like a factory in China to make the hats. And he said, no, I'm going to get a network of volunteers to do it. I said, mate, no way, it's not going to happen. He said, well, okay, all you've got to do is promise me 50p per hat. And I said, no problem, mate, because you're not going to get any hats. So that first year, he got 3,000 hats knitted by volunteers. The next year, it skipped to 20,000. The year after that, it was 80,000. Last year, it was 1.6 million hats, all knitted by volunteers all across Europe, all being sent into fruit towers, getting put on the bottles and then going out, and the consumer could see it. And so the consumer's not just the recipient of the charity, but they're also the person that's making the whole initiative possible in the first place. And you can use social media. So now we do Hat of the Week, and people can go onto our blog and vote for which hat that they think looks best. And this is our chill-out area in Fruit Tower. So we have knit-ins. So people come in. You can see it tends to be people at the slightly more senior end of the demographic, but come in and help knit the hats. So it's create this huge sort of texture of engagement between retailers, journalists, consumers, knitters. And it's been a brilliant thing. When we put the hats on the shelf, we sell more bottles, we get PR, and loads of money gets raised for charity. So I really do see it as one of the sort of the most holistically good things that we do. Third thing I found about loyalty, and again, I know, and I apologize for this, I'm teaching grandmothers to suck eggs. These are sort of basic, simple things, but I need to kind of remind myself of the basic, simple things, because that's kind of how you win in business, and getting the right people on the bus in the first place is the single best long-term driver of loyalty, because you need people that give a shit, quite frankly, excuse my language. You need people that care about answering the banana phone and looking after the consumer, and I can't make someone care about that. I can only find people that already have personal values that chime with that and that care about the things that we care about. So recruitment, to me, is the single most important business decision you're ever going to make in every respect. And certainly in terms of you're trying to build a culture around loyalty and engagement. You need, as Google would say, you need A types, because they're going to recruit A types. Whereas you recruit B types, they're going to recruit C types. And the whole business just becomes more spongy, more average, and people stop caring. You've got to find, and this is the thing that we look for, we try and find people that basically think yes in a world of people telling them no. I want people, when they answer the banana phone, which is our sort of consumer helpline, that they just want to help. They want to help, and I don't know why. It's probably because of the way that we're brought up by their parents or something, but I need to find people that are thinking, yeah, I want to, instinctively, they're in the corner of the consumer. I'm not going to teach them that. I'm just going to spot that if they're that kind of person, and then ask them to come and join at Fruit Towers. And then keep them engaged, because, of course, they're not going to care about the consumer if we're not caring about them. And one of the sort of simple things we've done is we've made it that anyone that works for Innocent becomes a shareholder. So, of course, they're an employee, but like myself, I'm also an employee, and I'm also a shareholder. Now, I've got more shares than them, but everyone's got some. And the more that people put into the business, the higher their performance ratings, the more shares, more discounted options, and more of the profit that they get to share in. So there's a real sense of you can be loyal to this thing because you're part of this thing, and if you create value, then you get value back out. And little cultural things, I think these help build engagement, they help build loyalty. Just simple things like every Monday at 9 o'clock, and we haven't missed one yet, the whole business gets together for half an hour, call it the Monday morning meeting. Every team gets 1 minute to talk about what's going on in their team to the rest of the business. And each week, each person in each team takes it turns to stand up in front of the business. So The whole business gets to hear what's going on that week. Everyone's getting an opportunity to speak to a room full of 200 people. It just creates a sort of a bit of a buzz, and it helps communicate. And that's another thing about driving loyalty. You can't expect people to be loyal and care about something they don't know about. So an overinvestment in communicating the status of what's going on and where the business is trying to get to, again, I think is another underpinning of loyalty and engagement. We do a thing called Lord and Lady of the Sash. So called because if you win it each month and you're a lady, you get given a tiara to wear and a sash. And if you're a guy, you get given a top hat and you're a lord and a sash. And then the whole business gets down on their hands and knees and has to pledge allegiance to you. And you can make anyone in the business make you a cup of tea for the whole of that month. We do a thing called innocent scholarships. So there are foundation scholarships where you go and work in the charity, but innocent scholarships are completely different. That's £1,000 that we give to people to do something outside of work that's got absolutely nothing to do with work, to chase their passion, whatever it is, whether somebody's used it to record a demo album, somebody used it to cycle across Africa, a guy recently used it to go on a home brewing course in Manchester. I don't care what it's for, I just care that you care about something. We want people who are passionate, engaged, have a weird little spike, and the business will support and invest in that. And I think all these things are absolutely massively important, and they're all the positive things about finding the right brains, engaging them, rewarding them, cultural references. But of course, there's the tough side as well. And again, it comes back to being a values-led business, which I'm, with Jerry, think is the single most important thing to be. If you've got people that aren't playing by the rules, that aren't in line with the values, you've got to get them off the bus. And that's the tougher side, but if you want a great experience, you're going to sometimes have to do the tough stuff. And again, this was a mistake that we made. We had 100% retention at Innocent for the first 3 years. And we thought that was good, that no one ever left. But sometimes you've got to be honest, there's somebody there that's not pulling their weight, and you're going to have to ask them to leave. And I only got this from hearing a bloke called Dan Walker, who was the head of talent at Apple Computers, talk at a business conference like this. And he was a big sort of macho American guy, sat on a stool with his legs wide open going, "You've got to get rid of the crap people. You've got to get rid of the crap people. You want a good business? Get rid of the crap people." And because this is Britain, we're all like amazed by how impolite this is. And this very sweet English woman put her hand up and said, "But I don't know what I'm supposed to do if I don't have anyone to replace the so-called crap person." And he just looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Honey, at the end of the day, I'd rather have a hole than an asshole." Tough language, and we know if we use that in business, we're going to find ourselves in tribunal, but there's a fundamental truth there, isn't there? You've got to do the tough stuff if you want to get the great results. Fourth thing that we found engages consumers is just working the tiny little details. Of course, the little details aren't instead of getting the big things right. You have to get the big things right. We've all got to make great products at the right price, being well distributed with good financial systems, all that sort of stuff. But that only gets you to the table. That only gets you to sort of zero. But the good news is the little details can then create the memory, create the reason for someone to talk about you, create the reason for someone to pick up your bottle rather than someone else's bottle. And they cost very little. And they're not significant in themselves. They're just tiny little things that you can do that just give a sort of slightly more emotional reaction in the consumer when they see it. This is a really tiny little example. It's not significant in itself. You're supposed to write "use by" next to your date code. We write "enjoy by." And legally, it says you're supposed to say "use by," but we went to trading standards and we sort of won our argument, and they said, "Okay, fair enough." And so it says "enjoy by." It's just a little bit more human. I don't want people to use our fruit juice. I want them to enjoy our fruit juice. We have not, however, been, as always, as successful in our endeavours with the trading standards. There's sometimes, I don't know if anyone's seen, but in our ingredients panel, we put in stupid jokes in the ingredients, which you're really, really not supposed to do, because that's the bit that really is legally protected, and that's where you're supposed to be dead serious. But when we first started out, we thought, oh, it's funny anyway. And I remember writing a strawberry banana label that said in the ingredients panel, 6 strawberries, 2 bananas, half an orange, and 2 plump nuns. Bad joke, didn't really mean anything by it. The label got printed, off it went, and then I got a call from a lady called Denise that worked at Kensington and Chelsea Trading Standards office saying, "Mr. Reed, we've had a complaint about this reference to two plump nuns on your smoothies." And I said, "Well, look, I'm incredibly sorry. It's just our stupid sense of humour, but obviously no one's going to take it seriously." And she said, "Well, we do. We're launching a formal investigation." And I remember thinking 2 things. Firstly, crikey, that sounds a bit serious. But then secondly, but I'm just intrigued to see where it all ends up. And Where it ended up was, after me having to write a series of different sort of defences in writing, being called to an official hearing, where I got there, and I don't think it was technically a course of law, but there was a big wooden bench. Behind it, there was 3 people sat. The guy in the middle was wearing a black gown. There was one of those ladies with a stenograph machine typing up everything. I had to put forward my case for the defence. Denise was there putting forward the case for the prosecution about, how this was a terrible thing. And the guy in the middle said he was going to retire to his room, come to his final ruling, and write to me with his decision. And 10 days later, I got the best letter I've ever got in business, which was from this body. And I opened it, and the first line was, "Dear Mr. Reed, you must either take off the reference to plump nuns or start putting them in your fruit juice." It's a great moment when you get a letter like that. So the details, they're good. They just create a memory. They create a reason for people to be loyal. They create reason for people to care. We cover our sampling vans in grass and daisies. They've got hydraulic system fitted, so they dance around, they blare out hip-hop. That just gets more noticed outside Sainsbury's on a Saturday morning. When we launched yogurt drinks, we turned our delivery vans into cows. Again, you can't really see, but round the back there's a tail and a pair of pink udders that hung down. And on the dashboard there's a button, you press it, it goes moo really loudly, and it just gets noticed. If you get noticed, it's a precursor to someone being loyal and caring. And we're really lucky. We've got this sort of right at the top of the pyramid, these people that are massively keen and real fans of the business. I know of 5 people so far that have got the logo permanently tattooed on different parts of their body. This is the only body part I can show in a professional context. There's people who have their babies up in our packaging. The weirdest statistic I've got about consumer sort of engagement and loyalty is on our 9th birthday, 38 different consumers made us a homemade birthday cake and brought it into Fruit Towers for us, which was quite an amazing thing, especially if you really like cake. And so these getting the big things right, having a sense of purpose, but then having these little things around the edge that create charm and a point of difference, I think have helped get a spirit of loyalty. But you've got to get the little details right. I mean, the little details are equally powerful if you get them wrong, so you've just really got to watch every little angle. And he's a bit of an easy target, I have to say, but there's a truth there. Working the details counts. And then the 5th thing is, I guess we have from the very beginning, from the inception point of our business, we've had the consumer sat in the middle of the room with us. When we came up with the idea of setting up smoothies, we got into the smoothie market, as I said, we set up a stall at a music festival to sell these bottles of smoothies that we'd made in our kitchen. And above the stall, we just put up a big sign that said, "Should we give up our jobs to make these smoothies?" And I had a bin that said yes on the front, and a bin that said no on the front, and asked people to buy the smoothies, drink them, and vote with the empty bottles. And as a group of 3 friends, we've made a commitment that if by the end of the weekend the yes bin was full, we'd go on the Monday morning and resign. And when we got to that Sunday night, we had a sort of hot, sweaty evening going through the bins, and the yes bin was full. And there was a few bottles in the no bin, which about 5 years ago our parents confessed to having put there because they were nervous about us giving up our jobs. But we only started the business by asking the consumer, did they want this thing? We didn't want to make something that people didn't want. So from the beginning, we've asked the consumer, we've had them bought into the sort of the decision-making part of the business. And again, it's simple things that cost nothing, but on the packaging it says, give us a ring on the banana phone, or drop us a line, or send us an email, or now tweet us or Facebook us. And it also always says, or pop round to Fruit Towers. So we are, whether you want to communicate only with us virtually and through the digital space, or whether you want to pop round to our front door and have a cup of tea and a smoothie, we are equally delighted. In any way that you want to communicate with us, then we're sat here listening, keen to hear what you have to say. And having that sort of culture within the business that we are all, ultimately, we've only got a job because someone's good enough to buy our smoothies. Without our consumer, we're just some guys with a really expensive fruit crushing hobby. So I need to remind people of that on a day-to-day basis. And again, it's just little cultural signifiers that the banana phone is indeed a big yellow plastic banana phone. And I have 3 people's champions whose job it is to deal with consumers that ring in. But if they're all on the phone at the same time, which can happen quite often, then it rings every single person's phone in the whole of Fruit Towers, which makes a massive amount of noise, but it means that one of us will pick up the phone, and all of us, whether you work in sales, HR, finance, we're all expected to answer the banana phone because we all work for the consumer and they've got a question or a query and we should be there to, answer those questions. And again, with having the doors to Fruit Towers always opens means that on a typical day, 1 or 2 groups of people turn up at Fruit Towers, and Out of the 250 people that work at Innocent, 50 people are volunteer tour guides, and some will go down and meet them and show them around the business. And again, I can't tell you that it's definitely worth it, but I think just spiritually what it shows is on a day-to-day basis, you're sat at your desk typing away, and business can so often be abstracted from what the thing really is. You're looking at your Excel spreadsheet or your PowerPoint presentation, but then walking by is a consumer, like maybe a mum and dad and their little kids, and it just reminds you of, yep, we're only here because people are good enough to buy the product. So I like this idea of keep inviting the consumer in. This is in our reception, we call our wall of acclaim. It's just things that people have sent in to sort of say what they think about the products. And people like make us presents and bags and tapestries and all sorts of weird things. And I think it's got to be a good sign of engagement if people feel they have to express themselves through the medium of needlework. And I like the fact that we've got that there. It's the first thing you'll see when you come in the business. This is a Saturday morning in our chill-out area where we do a thing called a grown-up meeting, where we get volunteer consumers to come in and we tell them everything about the business, all the bad stuff that's going wrong, all the good stuff that's going right, and then we get them to vote on what we should do next. We have the new products in development, we have the ad campaigns that we're thinking about spending money on producing, and then we have the charities that we're thinking of supporting, and they vote. And the products that they vote for, the ones that we launch, the ones that they don't, the ones that we put back on the shelf. Same with the ad campaigns, same with the charities we support. So it's not some PR stunt, it's incredibly useful. It helps make the right decisions by asking the people that are most important, our most loyal consumers. And we pay them nothing. For 100 tickets, we have 3,000 applicants. The last one we did, the nearest person came from Shepherd's Bush, which was half a mile away. The furthest person flew in from Singapore for it. I mean, so we have a sort of extraordinary group of people that really care, and we care too. And I think there's some sort of mutual sense of we're not asking just for the fun of it. We're asking because it's important to us to know what they think. And of course, you can use digital to do that as well, right? This is rate and review on our website. Every single product, you can rate and review it just like you can on Amazon, just like you can on TripAdvisor. How many bottles out of 5? What comments do you have? Hugely, hugely useful. And I like that, whether it's old school, come into the fruit towers and tell us, or whether you want to sit home and do it via the computer, it's all good. It's all telling us what you think is the most important thing. And my final chart, by the way, I've just got to show you, because for me it's the best example ever of some sort of consumer engagement. It's got nothing to do with Innocent. It was just a letter that was passed on to me. It was actually written by an 8-year-old girl who was on a flight to Australia with Qantas. And she wrote this letter, and she gave it to my friend who's an air hostess to be asked for it to be given to the pilot. And I just thought, actually, this is what business has got to be about. It's being open to when consumers are good enough to tell us what it exactly is that's most important to them. Because if we deliver what's most important to them, they're going to be more loyal to us. And it's my favorite example of something where the consumer really gets to the heart of what it is that she most cares about. I'll read it out because of the handwriting. It says, "Dear Captain, my name is Nicola. I'm 8 years old. This is my first flight, but I'm not scared. I like to watch the clouds go by. My mum says the crew is nice. I think your plane is good. Thanks for a nice flight. Don't fuck up the landing." Terrible language for an 8-year-old, but it sort of makes a point. Anyway, there's some of the things that we found to be true that builds loyalty, a sense of mission, a strong underpinning of ethics that just sort of, in an intangible way, seep out, getting people that care, working details, and most importantly, getting the consumer to be sat right in the middle of the boardroom. Thanks very much.